Hey yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Jack Shaw here, and welcome to Spooky Scary Saturday Part 12. If you guys like this series so much, I appreciate if you guys subscribe. If you guys are new on my channel, hit the like button. Follow my Twitter. It's in the description down below, and check out my merch store, which is also in the description down below. And hit that notification bell to get notified when every time I upload a new video, which is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So in today's video, we are reacting to 3 animations. So let's get started with the first animation right now. So this first animation is called Stairs, which is horror animation. Let's get started. Strawberry Nightmare.
In 1984, there lived an old widowed lady by herself in a 2-story house who was completely immobile and bound to her wheelchair. Ever since the mysterious death of her husband, she required the aid of a caregiver who would visit her daily to help her with everyday tasks. What made it even more difficult was the fact that the 2 floors of the house were only connected by an old staircase inside. When the old lady needed to move between the 2, the caregiver would have to carry her frail body like an infant up and down the stairs. One day, the police received a call from the widow. There had been a murder. Since police units were scarce at the time, and the murderer had already fled the scene, only one detective was sent out to conduct the initial crime scene report. He arrived to see the caregiver's body splayed out on the floor, with her vocal cords ripped out in a pool of blood on the first level of the house, with the old lady atop the staircase in her wheelchair, watching him, still and silently, seemingly in shock. He could immediately rule her out as a suspect due to her inability to move up and down the stairs, and because she was trapped up there the time the murder took place. The detective put on gloves, took photos, swabbed for evidence, and covered the body until the coroner arrived later. All routine business. He scoped the house downstairs for any clues, then asked the old lady if he could look upstairs. She insisted that she was upstairs the whole time, and no one apart from her had been up there that day. But regardless of this, the detective ascended the staircase, to which she hesitantly moved aside. Beyond the staircase there was a narrow corridor with 3 closed doors along it. He checked behind each of the doors. The empty bedroom, nothing. The bathroom, nothing. He became anxious as he slowly made his way to the final bedroom where the old lady slept. He opened it, and everything looked normal. A bed, a wardrobe, and a bedside table with a lamp. He checked every wall of the room in horror, as it was not what he discovered, but it was what he didn't discover that made him stop dead in his tracks and slowly reach for his gun in its holster. It was a detail so minor that they had completely overlooked it on the last investigation of the husband's death. There was no phone upstairs. He suddenly heard a noise as he withdrew his gun and rushed out of the room, only to find an empty wheelchair atop the stairs.
Okay guys, that was the first animation. the old lady out of the house. So yeah, let's move on to the second animation right now. Okay, this next animation is called True Bus Stop Horror Stories. These are all personal by me. So that was the first one and the second one. Let's get started. True Bus Stop Horror Story.
This is something that happened to me 3 years ago and still sticks with me, especially when I'm out at night. I was on my way back home from a late night session at the gym. The gym is right next to my campus, but my flat was on the complete opposite side of the city, so I was definitely making sure that I caught one of the last buses. Otherwise, it was a long walk back. I got to the bus stop and it was empty, except for this one older guy who looked pretty disheveled and out of it. Already, this was setting off alarm bells in my mind. So I stood far away from him and began to wait. The bus tracker said that the next bus wouldn't be here for another 15 minutes. Damn it. Oh well. I put my headphones in and started listening to one of my podcasts to pass the time, all the while making sure that I kept the man within my peripheral vision. It should be noted at this point that I'm very short. I'm 4 feet 5 inches and about 95 pounds, and I'm used to unwanted attention. And it was against my better judgment that I was even out this late and by myself in an unfamiliar part of town. I must have let my guard slip, because I suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder and the man was standing right next to me. Too close. I looked at him and he was saying something to me, so I took my headphones out to hear him.
You alright there, pal? I was saying I've never seen someone so short before.
He was swaying and grinning at me. I'm alright, thanks.
What bus are you getting?
I did not want to answer that, truthfully. But there were only 2 buses left to come that night. I said it was the other one, and he looked disappointed.
I've always wanted to meet someone like you.
He stood there and stared at me for what felt like a whole minute. I felt his eyes all over me. Now I understand what it means to feel like a piece of meat. Eventually, he said,
Do you have sex?
I've had some inappropriate questions from strangers before, but that took the biscuit. I should have said it was none of his business, but I find myself saying, yes, uncomfortably. He seemed to contemplate that for a while, amused by the idea.
What's it like down there? I've always wanted to know.
From his tone, he sounded excited. I took a couple of steps away from him. This time I was more prepared. That's not really your business. I was thinking about how long the walk would be back home. He was getting the bus I needed. I didn't know where the other bus was going. Was it worth it going through with my lie? I didn't know. I suspected that he would get on the same bus as me regardless. He took a step closer. This was the moment I actually got scared. He saw me step backwards and didn't care. He knew I was uncomfortable and didn't care.
I've always wanted to fuck a midget.
That was it. I wish I had said, get lost or leave me the fuck alone or something along those lines. But I was just too scared. I need to go, I blurted out, and walked as briskly as I could without running. It would take him no effort at all to catch up to me. I pictured him walking behind me with his much longer legs, but I didn't want to look back. I walked for a couple of minutes before I finally glanced back. He was still at the bus stop, but he had moved about 10 feet to stand at the edge of it. I could only see his silhouette against the light of the bus stop, but I could tell that he was watching me. I walked a full hour and a half home, picturing him following me the whole way. It creeps me out to this day.
Okay, so there's been inappropriate things, but I'll cut that out, don't worry. And yeah. Alright guys, moving on to the third animation right now. Now this animation is called True Cottage Horror Story Animated, and the last two ones were okay. They are not really that scary. This episode or this series or this part, it's not really that scary. I feel like it. Hopefully this one will scare me. Let's see. Let's see what happens now. And if you guys want to send me videos to scare me on my next video, next part of it, my Twitter is in the description down below. Go follow me, send me some videos you guys want me to react to it, and yes, let's get started.
This event happened when I was around 13 years old. I was going on a family road trip with my parents and siblings. My brother was 16 at the time and my half-sister was 21. I don't completely remember where we were going or where we stayed since it was almost 15 years ago. All I remember was that we rented a cottage in a small village. Next to the village was a lot of mountains surrounding the perimeter, and there were probably only 20 houses in the village. Next to the cottage was a small lake that was big enough to kayak in, and to the right of the little lake was a small shed. The shed was very old, and its ceiling had been poorly repaired. There was ivy growing all over it. Although this may not seem scary, the door was wide open and the place we were staying at was all fenced off with a really high fence. This probably meant that no one would be able to come into our property. Later that same day, my brother and I decided to check it out since we had nothing else to do other than swim in the lake before dinner. Bear in mind, this happened in the winter, meaning it would get dark much earlier than in the summer. We walked up towards the shed, and as we walked towards it, we realized that a source of light was shining through the ceiling. It didn't seem like it was a normal ceiling light, but was almost like a torch. We saw the light slowly move around in between the cracks of the shed. Then, in one sudden motion, the light randomly pointed at us. My brother and I were petrified by the situation. We both looked
Look at that face. They're paranoid.
at each other with blank expressions. Our parents were in the lounge watching TV, so they wouldn't be able to hear us at all if we cried out for help. I don't like to be cliche, but my big brother is a very strong person, emotionally, physically, and mentally. So I was surprised when I saw his lower lip tremble out of the corner of my eye. I thought he was going to protect me by telling me what to do, but instead he just stood there, frozen, like me, with a petrified face as the bright light blinded us through the gaps between the walls of the shed for what felt like an eternity. Suddenly, the light switched off. A small sense of relief hit me as the light turned off, but I was still scared for my life. Because the light was shining on our faces for so long, our eyes were not used to the dark. When we tried to escape by running in the opposite direction towards the cottage, we couldn't see where we were going. Then, as if the situation couldn't get any worse, we heard a loud shuffling sound coming from the shed. We could hear the sound starting to crescendo as we ran silently towards the cottage. The sound was getting louder and louder. Soon after, I could just make out a hollow voice coming from behind us. I hesitantly looked behind me. To my horror, I saw a middle-aged man standing next to the shed with a flashlight in his hand. His hands were covered in what looked like blood, and his hair was greasy as if he never showered once in his life. He had a long beard that looked tangled and disgusting. In a faint voice, he said, "Come here, child. I have many toys in here. Do you want to play some games with me?" He said this with a creepy smile and eyes wide open without blinking. He looked as if he was talking to me. I instantly screamed as loud as I could, and my brother grabbed my hand with dear life as we sprinted back into the cottage. We told our parents what happened, and I hugged my brother and sister with tearful eyes. They didn't believe us at first because they were so shocked by the situation and so confused. But when they saw the monstrous man's face pressed up against the window with a bloody butcher's knife in his hand, they screamed in horror and immediately called the police. The police were nearby since it was a small town, but as the sirens came, we saw the man run back to his shed, and unfortunately, they never caught him. They asked us what he looked like and what he said to us. The police told us that a girl that looked similar to me and was roughly the same age as me was murdered last month because of that man we saw from the shed. I can't imagine what would have happened if we stayed in a busy town that weekend, or if the police didn't make it in time. I am now scared to go near sheds after that incident, and I will never be the same. A situation like this has not happened since, but I really hope that man is either caught or is being chased by the police, because those few moments scarred me for life.
Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Okay guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, subscribe if you're new, follow my Twitter, hit the like button, turn on the post notification, and go and check out my merch store. It's in the description down below. And yes, I will link all these videos, the 3 animations, in the description down below so you guys can watch it by yourself. And yes, I'll see you guys next time. Adios.